Oh, Coach, we brought in a repeat. Chris the Bear Fallica joining us. This is always fun. We get to chat with a lot of the folks you worked with in your previous media days, Coach.
Yeah, always fun to have the Bear on, and without question, one of the most preeminent guys in college football. He was a long time ago, but more people know about him now that he's on so many different platforms. But Bear, glad to have you with us, buddy.
I'm jealous, by the way. I see you got to spend some time with my man Stanford Steve last week.
Yeah, I mean, that was always your call, though. You know, I took good care of you. We always
did.
We would go different places to eat. And one quick story: we took Bear over to Marker 7, and it just happened to be some recruits in there. And Muschamp had these two guys, and I told Bear about them and everything. And the parents were over there at the same time, and I thought it was pretty cool and all. I'm just sitting with the Bear, and I'm thinking maybe they want to meet the old coach, and Muschamp comes over there and says, "Hey, these parents want to meet the Bear." And so Bear goes over and said, "Yeah, I'm always around UGA." He said, "It's a big deal for me." He did a good job on him, Bear.
I was gonna say, I think I did all right. Did I do all right?
Yeah, we're 2 for 2 on that. The one kid transferred to Humphreys, is transferred to A&M, but yeah, I thought that shows you what a rock star you are. The parents recognize you and everything. Muschamp use it to our advantage, say, hey, those ESPN guys like to be around their players. But at the same time, now you're with Fox. How's that going for you?
Yeah, it's good. It's been a little bit different just because of, obviously, with Fox being more of a Big 10, Big 12 rights holder. That's kind of where our show goes. And I miss – it's funny. People always ask me, like, what do you miss? Do you love it? And look, it's been great. The crew is great. Some of the Big 10 games we've been to were great. We've been to some fun Big 12 sites. And what I always tell people is I miss two things. I miss doing the pod with Stanford Steve because that was always fun. And I miss being around the college football playoff, which obviously ESPN has the rights to the playoff, and Fox kind of goes away in terms of college football after the Big Ten championship game. But that's fine. It gives me an opportunity to sit and watch at home and text you throughout the playoff and gear up for the Australian Open when the tennis gets going. But it's been fun between the football, getting to go to Australia for the Women's World Cup a couple of years ago, World Cup coming up this year, Belmont Stakes, they're doing a Super Bowl. I mean, there are a lot of big events that I was able to do now at Fox that I wasn't necessarily able to do at ESPN. So it has been a net positive for me, despite, like I said, the two things I really miss: being around the playoff and being at those games, and then hanging out with my man Steve, bullshitting about whatever on the pod.
Yeah, I missed that pod too. Y'all would ask me for my picks once in a while, but let's go with.
Have we had a steamer lately? I think we had one a couple of weeks ago. You filled me in, right?
Yeah, I'm not as big on the picks now that I don't have you guys to talk to about. But hey, from our standpoint, this is a Georgia site, but we're going to get into Georgia on the get-go and then go more on the national scene. But we've talked about it off air and all. But your thoughts on Georgia and so far this year and what you think about them?
They are I've joked about it, made a couple of like references to like old school WWF with like Gorilla Monsoon and the intestinal fortitude, and then my buddy Bill Raftery with the onions. Like that's what Georgia is right now. They clearly have their flaws on the defensive side of the ball for sure, and certainly there are some times where the offense kind of gets a little stuck in the mud, but they are hard to kill. I mean, you get down double digits on the road. Knoxville, you get down double digits on the road at Auburn. You're down at home, and it looks like you can't get a stop, and then all of a sudden you do. And that's a credit to the type of kids that Kirby recruits, the way he practices with them, the mentality he and his staff kind of instills in them, and just the belief that it just kind of keep scratching, keep fighting, and all of a sudden you're in it. And someone was telling me, and I'm going to have to go back and look at it, like Georgia has like some ridiculous record when they're either trailing by halftime or down. Like their record when either trailing by halftime or trailing by double digits at any point in the game compared to the national average is like insanely good. So it's interesting, like, because you think at some point, and maybe that fourth quarter is going to kind of be the Zen moment, the wow moment, that's kind of the moment maybe where they figure it out and things from here on out get better. But I would not be surprised at all. Maybe the tiebreakers are going to go against them and they won't wind up in the SEC championship game. But it would not be surprising to me at all if Gunnar Stockton is in December in New York, the second weekend of December, and if this team's playing on Monday night, January 19th for the national title. Because outside of Ohio State right now, like, I don't want to say, who do you trust? Did you trust Indiana off the 1-1 to Oregon? Do you trust Alabama, knowing that Georgia with the fourth down conversion there, or kick a field goal there, you probably win that game? Like, I think the equity that Kirby and that program has built up certainly should mean a lot of people give this team the ultimate amount of respect that it deserves, and would not be surprised if this team makes a deep playoff run.
Well, you make a lot of people happy with that situation, but the reality is we have faced three really good offensive teams. I mean, you look at Tennessee, Alabama, and certainly Auburn in the first half against us, and Ole Miss. I mean, these guys are throwing BBs at us. I mean, it was hard to cover them. And you and I have talked off air about the guys we've lost. But I think the fact that you've got such a national perception about the other teams to give us a little reality pill about who you got. I mean, there's really – Ohio State clearly is dominated. There's no question about it. And they've got the talent level on defense and the playmakers. But you make a point about look at who else. You got to pick 11 other teams, and there's, certainly we're in that mix, don't you think?
Absolutely, and I brought this up on the Monday Reacts pod with Jeff and Sammy P, and I brought it up on our call on the Big Noon call. And I'm actually going to have a little. Joel Klatt and I are going to go through the exercise a little bit later on in terms of, like, if you're drafting college football, like, who you think can win the national championship, where is Notre Dame ranking? How many teams are you picking over Notre Dame? They're a 2-loss team, and a lot of people, you lost to Miami, you lost to A&M, but right now the way they're playing and how good those two backs are, and how much better and more experienced CJ Carr is getting, like, they're going to be a tough out. But you look at Ole Miss, and they're a great example. Like last week, do you ultimately think in the playoff they're going to get stops that they need to rip off three or four potential wins? You look at a team like Oregon. Does Dante Moore concern you? The best test that they had this year. I mean, they won at Penn State, and it's hard to kind of eliminate that loss because I think they had a lot to do with sending Penn State into the spiral that they are. But there were concerns against Indiana. I mean, and they looked slow and couldn't, and Moore looked confused. In Indiana, we saw what they were in the playoff last year. They got the win at Oregon, but can Indiana win 3 games like that? It's Miami with how they looked last week. I mean, I think there are probably some concerns right now with Carson throwing 4 picks last week and their inability to run the ball. Vanderbilt, it looks like a legitimately good team, but like the Big 12, we thought Texas Tech was this be all end all, and they were going to rip through the conference, and then their quarterback gets hurt and losing a really good defensive lineman. Now that league is up in the air. Like, why can't we look? Nobody, I think, last year saw Notre Dame winning. Well, I think I saw them beating Indiana, and then they get a shorthanded Georgia team, and then Penn State makes the mistake late, and there they are in the national championship game. Like, why can't Georgia find themselves to be kind of that team, maybe host the first round playoff game, and then kind of work their way through? I think you're going to get a run like that where you're going to get one of those types of teams ultimately against Ohio State in the national title game.
Well, and Chris, the other piece of that is quarterbacks that you trust, because this feels so volatile as compared to preseason when it was about Lagway and Sellers and Klubnik and Nussmeier. And now nationally, there's a reframing of the conversation around a Gunnar Stockton, around a Diego Pavia. Who are the quarterbacks that you trust right now midway through this season as we start to flip ahead to playoff projections?
And I think you've got to trust Ty Simpson now. I think that game in Tallahassee to open the season was clearly a one-off. His first start, his road start against a team that was coming off a 2-10 year. You were down running backs, you were down defenders, and I think clearly you trust Ty Simpson. I think you clearly trust Gunnar Stockton. And again, there was this narrative going into the year that a lot of people were kind of rumbling, and your guys are, not you two specifically, but you're at the epicenter of it, where it was like, oh, Georgia's going to be better off without Carson Beck, and be just fine without Gunnar Stockton, and maybe now it's playing out that way. The guy clearly is a playmaker, and the team really believes in him. I think you trust C.A. Carr. I think you can trust Marcel Reed. I think you can trust Trinidad Chambliss after what he did last week. I would have said you could trust Carson Beck prior to last week, but there were some questionable throws and plays that he made in that game. And hopefully he can bounce from that as a Miami alum that I am. So I think you can trust Julian saying now. I think the way that Ryan and Brian Hartline have brought him along early in the year, there really weren't a lot of deep throws, long throws in the games, but I think they got through that. And now the good thing about playing in the Big Ten, where you're going to get a lot of Minnesotas and Wisconsins and Michigan States and those types of teams that really aren't going to threaten you, you can build this kid's confidence up against these poor teams and get him familiar with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate on the outside. That way, when you do have to play Michigan the end of the regular season, when you do have to play Indiana in the Big Ten championship game, and when you do have to face a couple of SEC teams in the college football playoff, he's got the ability to make those plays. So I think the list of quarterbacks that you trust, I think right now is pretty deep. But isn't it funny that how now we're talking about, you mentioned the names before the year, and Nussmeier and Arch and Lagway and Sellers and these names, and we're not even talking about those guys anymore. We're talking about trusting Diego Pavia and Julian saying. It's pretty funny how the season's turned.
Yeah, you and I used to talk about the preseason polls. You said something like, hey, start picking them in October. But you look at the Penn State, Clemson, all these teams out of the way. But from your standpoint, having such a good beat on the national scene and traveling like you did with Game Day, now going more specifically Big Ten and those there, what would you say that overall, you just kind of hit it for a little bit about the lesser teams, but don't you think that the strength of schedule has got to get into this picking of teams because of the amount of teams that are just have some layups every week compared to the SEC? And I'm not necessarily, I'm not necessarily a homer. I am to a certain extent, but it really gets me because you see them firsthand and you've seen them. There's a significant difference in some of these teams that these better teams have to play in the Big Ten, isn't it?
It's not even close. And people who support the Big Ten, like, they kind of scoff there. And even people, it's funny the amount of BYU people I have like coming at me now with like talking about the schedule and such. But the numbers bear it out. And I put a tweet out the other day about the number of ranked matchups that we've had in October. You've had 15 of them. There are 13 of them. 8 of them have been SEC conference matchups. You've got 2 Big Ten, 1 Big 12, 1 ACC, and 1 non-conference matchup. You look. I didn't update the numbers from this week, and they probably got a little bit better because Illinois did get back into the rankings. But last week, Alabama's schedule had 6 teams that were ranked in the poll. Oregon, Ohio State, and Indiana combined had 4. It's like you're playing 2 different sports. And I always equate this to back in 2013 when Florida State was a great team. And the ACC was garbage. But Florida State was a historically great team in terms of the talent they had, the power ratings, their dominance. But the ACC stunk. And it's kind of the same thing, in essence, this year with the Big Ten. Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon are 3 of the best 5 or 6 teams in the country. But after that, there isn't a playoff team. USC's probably the 4th best team in that league. They're not going to make the playoff. Michigan, you have to run out and beat Ohio State. I'm not sure they're going to do it to get to 10-2. I don't think they're going to make the playoff. Illinois is not a playoff team. There's no 4th team. Like when you go down and you're looking at the SEC, and like if like your number 9 team, well, let's look at the standings right now. Like if your number 9 team in the SEC right now, I'm just looking at the ESPN.com page, 3, 6. If your number 9 team is LSU in the SEC, and your number 9 team in the Big Ten is 3, 6 UCLA, like what are we doing? That's not even like close in terms of like schedule and that's the thing. Like the biggest problem now is with these unbalanced schedules and the deep conferences, or how like so many of these teams miss the good teams. And now, the Big Ten kind of drew a short straw this year because Penn State wasn't nearly as good as people thought they were going to be. And it's an Ohio State opponent. It's an Indiana opponent. So it is what it is. But year in and year out, I mean, it's just not even close. And we'll see. The playoff committee has said that they're going to look at strength of record, strength of schedule, and that's going to matter. And that's always kind of been my deal. And people, I think, are starting to understand it more. Like it's possible for a team that is 10-2 to be a better team than that has a record of 11-1. It's possible for some 9-3 teams to be better than a team that's 10-2. You've got to weigh it out with your schedule and conference strength and who you played, who you beat. I think that stuff matters. So we'll see how it bears out come late in the year, because there are a couple of interesting scenarios that where you could have a bunch of 10-2 SEC teams. You can have some 10-2 SEC teams that aren't in. You could have a 10-2 Notre Dame team with the 2 close losses to Miami and A&M that they may be on the outside looking in, depending on how many teams from other leagues get in. Here's a wild one for you. And I'm sure you'll appreciate this, and this would kind of blow some people's heads down there. What about the possibility of the ACC getting 3 teams in? You could have Miami. You would have Miami, who probably is not going to make the ACC title game. Again, I am assuming Miami wins the rest of their games. Not a given by any means. So they'll be 11-1 with the win over South Florida, who's probably the Group of 5 rep, and a win over Notre Dame. So you've got to take them over Notre Dame. You could have Georgia Tech. What if Georgia Tech pulls the upset at the Dome and beats the Dogs Thanksgiving weekend, and they go to the ACC championship game 12-0, and then they lose to Virginia? 12-1 Georgia Tech with the win over Georgia in an undefeated regular season. You probably got to put them in, and then you got to put Virginia, who won the in, right? It could be pretty wild that the ACC can wind up with 3 teams. I mean, will it work out that way? Probably not, but it's fun. It's what we'd love to do at this time. We like to hypothesize and kind of throw crazy situations out there.
Yeah, Georgia Tech's got the best schedule that anybody could have. I mean, they don't have to play. Very rarely do you get a schedule like that. I give them credit. They got the great quarterback, and Buster. I think Buster should be the Broyles Award winner this year as the best assistant coach in the country, the way he's running that offense. But realistically, I mean, they got to play really – I mean, they got to give it away. And they should have lost the Wake Forest game. That was a bad call there. But there's not a lot of love for Tech on this, but you got to give them some respect. But their schedule really sets up to be 11-0 when they play us, right?
It sure does. And you brought up the blatant offsides miss by the ACC officials. You beat Clemson. You got the road win at Colorado, we like to talk about this in terms of like strength of record and schedule that we were just talking about, like being a betting guy, being a numbers guy, being a power ratings guy. Like Georgia Tech is that team this year that the polls have ranked so much higher than what the power ratings do. Like they're 7th in the polls. Is anybody look, truth serum? None of the 3 of us believe that Georgia Tech is a top 10 team talent-wise. Like you look at Sagarin rating, I think they're 23rd. SP Plus, I think they're 26th. FPI, I think they're 28th. So like the power ratings clearly are on to Georgia Tech, and BYU is that other team. BYU is a top 12 team in terms of the poll. The power ratings all have them much lower, right around 20 or so, upper teens. So like these are the teams that continue to confuse and get betters every week. I like Duke -1.5 last week, closed at 3. Duke fumbles going in, and it was just kind of like the Duke game earlier against Illinois when Duke had Illinois on their own, turned the ball over 5 times. Like, yeah, you had him beat. You look at the box score, and like it was first half domination statistically. It's how is Duke like not blowing Georgia Tech out right now? Crazy things happen.
Chris, I want to touch on a couple just TV related pieces. You've worked in TV a long time. I teach students at UGA just about media industry stuff. College game day for Lee Corso to go out on those terms and be celebrated in that way is increasingly rare in TV, that someone gets to kind of age gracefully on TV. You were such a big part of that show, seeing that celebration to kick off the season. What was your reaction to it? How did you take that in from your perspective?
It was great, and it was well-deserved, and it shouldn't have been any other way. I was so excited and happy to be there in Columbus. And I think when you're talking about media and such, it was a great example of everyone always talks and tries to pit media channels against each other. It was a great example of ESPN and Fox coming together, and Fox simulcasting the end of College Game Day, and Fox allowing ESPN to be on the field to give Lee the send-off that he deserved. And I didn't watch the entire show, obviously, because I'm working, but obviously the final segment was on the Jumbotron there. But I think what I saw, obviously, in my time in 27 years on game day, I mean, Lee built that. Lee was the heart and soul and the one irreplaceable part of that show. And I think to the last few years, and certainly since I've been gone, you saw the decline in Lee's an 87-year-old man, and it was time. But I think the love that everyone on that set had for him, we were all there to look. Lee, when I first started and Kirk first started, Lee was there for us as a resource, as a sounding board, is kind of that light in the atmosphere when needed. They give you a little life lesson when needed. He was there for us. And later in his career, after he had his stroke, we were there for him. Everybody on that set was there to kind of reach out and help Lee along when he needed it. So it was great that ESPN allowed him to go out the way that he should have gone out on his terms with that one final show. And it was good to see him during the Miami Florida State telecast when Chris and Kirk were calling that game, and they were able to catch up with him in Tallahassee. So he's a broadcast legend, and certainly will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for them to replace.
Well, and my other TV-related question, every Saturday, I get to sit beside Coach Jim Donnan and watch Georgia play whoever they're playing. And he still is calling plays. For the Kentucky game, Chris, he was calling Kentucky's plays before they were happening. His brain works differently as a coach. I know you sat beside him on plenty of Saturdays up in those halls in Bristol. Was it the same experience of him? Yeah,
of course it is. And the best would be when he would have to try and control it on television, but you're watching and you really can't control it. You see it, and like you have one train of thought, and then you see like a team doing something like, and it's like, well, and you want to be like talking about like what you're talking about, but you're watching the game out of the and he's getting wound up, and then like they go to commercial break and I'll come out and start talking about, do you believe? And that's what I love. I just love the impromptu, natural, and it's funny because Corso was the same way on the sideline. Like he would be on like, usually he would go to like the team that he picked sideline, and like he'd be like right there in the coaching box, and like he would be wound up and animated on the sideline. Urban's kind of the same way right now, watching games with him, not as animated, but Coach Donnan, he like what you see now is what he was back in the ESPN days, where he's just animated and excited and like question. Like I just love being around these great former coaches. I mean, because I learn a shit ton about the game. Like I can break down numbers and I can do things like that and talk about history of the sport, trends, and mathematically, and offer an opinion on who I think. But he's lived it. I mean, he's been around national championship teams and great players. He's been calling plays and then knows the inside and out. And I learned so much about the game from people like Coach Donnan and other people around it just by a reaction like that. When and he'll say, "Oh, well, can you believe?" And I'll be like, "Well, why should they have done that?" As opposed, and then you go into a great dissertation about like the education of the game. So that's the stuff that I appreciate, and not to go too much into the weeds and go off on a tangent, but I think we miss that now in a lot of coverage in so many shows. Like, I think there is an appetite, a market, and a need and a desire for people to learn from former coaches and former players about a film or a play, and not just have these kind of like talking head debate shows where people who haven't necessarily been in the weeds can't offer. Now, they can offer things like I offer, but not many people can offer things living the sport for 50, 60 years or whatever.
Yeah, we had an advantage there with Mike McQuaid, who's just such a, he had such a vision about what could give the audience like you're talking about. But from day one, Bear had one up on me because he let me know right away he was a Miami guy. And you know how bad they got us at Oklahoma, 3-0. But I did get them a couple of times when I was playing at NC State, when coaching at NC State, and then FSU. But he's always, the rest of my life, I got no chance with Bear when we started talking about OU and Miami. But it was a good busting each other, though. We had a lot of fun. And, during the course of the day, for the fans out there, it really is. It's not just peaches and cream. I mean, you've got to be ready to deliver so many, particularly when you're in the studio. Now, you're doing a game, it's pretty easy. You study them all week, but you got a myriad of teams. And without people like Bear, the people up there would be hurting, because he could come up with those stats and tell you in the timeout or anything about, because we had to come up and talk about teams that I didn't even know about sometimes, that all of a sudden it surfaced on the day of the game. And his ability to get to the stats and he just made me look good so many times that I didn't really know anything about him. I will say one time we had a game that Reese and I had to do a halftime show for ESPNU. They didn't even have anybody to do that. But we were up in Bristol, and they said, "Hey, let's do this Southwest Louisiana and Army or something game at halftime." And Bear gives me the stats. Hey, Army's had this and that. And so I come on there, and neither one of us had seen diddly on it. But Bear, you made us look good.
Well, let's talk about. I think it was Bob Sutton. I think might have been the coach. The coach over there. So what? I'm not winding you up now. I'm being dead serious. What was the number? I'm trying to do it mathematically in my head. Like from 85 to 87, what was it? Miami and Oklahoma were like a combined 66-5.
We lost all three to Miami.
Yeah, and Miami lost, I think.
They lost to Alabama.
They lost to Penn State in the '86 title game. It's like the two teams combined for like 5 losses, and 3 of them were to each other or something like that. It just goes to show you how ridiculous it was, how great those two teams were.
Yeah, I mean, they and so many players in the pros and all. And we talked about it. We had an '85 national championship reunion last 2 weeks ago. I didn't get to go, but so many of those guys out there, and they FaceTimed me. But just some tremendous talent, and the coaches involved. Wanstead and all those guys that worked for Jimmy, and then for Coach Switzer, Gary Gibbs and Mac Brown was there before me, and Galen Hall, a lot of coaches that made it good. But finishing up here, Bear, how do you feel about the down the stretch here? Is there anybody you think maybe is coming on that we hadn't talked about that could maybe make a run here? That there's not a lot of really secrets anymore, but anybody you think it's really starting to peak? I think Georgia defensively has got to make a move, no question. But outside, anybody else that really we should be looking for?
I would say Vandy. They're really not on the outside looking in, but I think we have to give them their flowers, give them their due at this point. They are a super well-coached team. They got a quarterback who makes plays. They're physical up front and so well-coached. Why can't Vandy win this week against Missouri? Why can't they go to Texas and win? Well, what has Texas done to show that they should be given that game even in Austin? Why can't Vandy go to Knoxville and win? Like, this could be another 10-2 type team in the SEC, and maybe we could find Diego Pavia in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony in December. I think they're a team. I think you're going to see Notre Dame continue to climb up the rankings. I think if you're looking as well, if you're one team that's kind of down there right now that not a lot of people are talking about is Cincinnati. I think the Big 12, the way that race shapes up, if you look at Sorsby, and since they got Corleone back on the defense, they can run the ball. Sorsby's a dual threat guy. They probably, I don't want to say should have beaten Nebraska, but could have beaten Nebraska in the season opening game. They're 6-1 right now. And they got a tricky game this week against Baylor, but they're a team that I think everyone's just assuming Texas Tech or BYU or Utah from the start of the year was going to be the team in the Big 12. They could kind of be that sneaky type team to maybe make a run here and make the Big 12 championship game that no one's talking about right now. So they would be the one team from a little bit off the map that I would.
Do they have to play BYU and Texas Tech?
They play BYU, I believe. Let me pull my schedule up right now. I got ways of doing this, Coach. I should have had this.
Yeah,
they host BYU. They're at Utah, which I don't necessarily know if that's a problem or not, but they host BYU, and I would expect them to beat BYU at historic Nippert Stadium.
Dayne's going to ask you one more question, but I want to finish up with this. Just real quick, who do you like for the Penn State job, for the Florida job?
Oh, I think Florida. You look at the Florida, and it basically is like Lane or bust right now. And I would like to just kind of throw this out there. Like, are we sure? Like, Florida is that much better of a job than Ole Miss in terms of being able to acquire talent and like upward movement? Like, Lane had like the second best roster in the country last year at Ole Miss. And
definitely, you're right. I mean, the way the portal is now, you don't look at high school recruiting, and Lane knows how to do it and get his team. I don't think it's a given that he's just going to take, but you're exactly right. But
look at Florida. Like people, I think people think like Florida's top 5, top 10 talent every year. Last 15 years, including Urban's last year at Florida, we've had 4 10-win seasons, 5 losing seasons, been on ranked 9 times, and finished in the top 10 3 times. Like, the numbers kind of bear out that like Urban had a great run, Spurrier had a great run, but since then they've been sputtering. Like, so you would think Lane, and then I still wonder. Like, I don't think Matt Rule is the hire at Penn State. I worry. Look, I love Matt, and I love Matt since he was at Temple. But if the biggest knock against James Franklin at Penn State was that he couldn't win top 10, win the big game, beat top 10 teams, you're going to get rid of James Franklin for that. And then you're going to bring in your alum, Matt Rule, who at Nebraska has lost like 18 straight games against ranked teams. Like,
right.
That seems like a hard sell to me. I'm telling you, the one name you keep hearing Mike Elko when he addressed that, but I still think there's a little bit of smoke when it comes to Marcus Freeman. You keep hearing things like beneath the surface. I mean, he lost his personnel guy last year who went to SC. You always worry about like admissions at Notre Dame, and people like keep bringing that up. Like, I wonder if Florida or Penn State don't make a Godfather type offer to Marcus Freeman and are willing to wait until after the college football playoff to see.
Does he wear a visor?
Yeah, no. Did you see him with the nice hat? He had the
first
hat.
thing they said, he liked the visor. I mean, that visor's not going to do anything for him. And he had
the hat on last week with the rain to kind of protect.
Yeah, he did have that on.
Sharp-looking hairline. Hey, can before we get to Dayne, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What you and I would like to talk about the numbers. Like, So I was surprised that Oklahoma was a 4.5-point favorite over Ole Miss. Like from being on the sidelines and around teams, like, do you think Ole Miss can bounce back from like not getting a stop last week, and now you go on the road to Norman? Because like if you win that game, you're in the playoff. You're 10-2 at worst. But like I was surprised to see Ole Miss that big of a dog at Oklahoma, because I'm not sure how good that OU offense is.
Well, here's the thing about Oklahoma. Of course, I follow it, and my family's out there. My son-in-law played there, and my son lives there, and my grandson keeps up with them, both of them. So I know a little more about Oklahoma than I do some teams. But the reality is their defense is really good up front, but their secondary relies on pressure. And if you can have a sophisticated passing game and get the ball down the field and not get affected by the rush, there's plenty of guys open. I mean, throughout the course of the Auburn game, they had all these overthrows, and fortunately, the guy never hooked up with them. So I think if this Trinidad Chambliss can play anywhere near like he's played, particularly the fact that he is mobile enough to avoid the rush, they can give OU, if it gets into a scoring game, OU doesn't have the offense to keep going against them. And certainly we've seen Ole Miss's defense look pretty shoddy all year, and he got the home crowd and everything like that. But Mateer's going to have to come back and play like he did earlier in the year and make some plays on his own. I think that's a really distorted number. I would take Ole Miss with those points, just because looking at both teams, I think they just have a lot. Their strength matches up good against OU's defense, and OU's defense is good, but they can't cover guys if you get them in, get the ball launched.
So, Chris, with numbers, with betting lines, when a team fires its coach, how do you adjust how you view that? Because UCLA, Penn State's the perfect example. There's nothing in the numbers that said that should have been remotely possible. Will Florida be a different team? Arkansas competing the way they have. How do you adjust it when a coach is no longer there and they're rebuilding in the moment?
I like to look at the situation and like try and realize, is this was the team like in Florida's situation? I don't know if you're going to get like a bounce or not, because Florida played hard for beat Texas 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. I mean, they won last time. They've been playing hard for Napier. Like they haven't quit. They said they played hard against Miami. Their offense wasn't very good, but they played hard. At LSU, they only allowed 13 points, so it wasn't like the team quit on him. So like I don't know if that's really going to make a big difference for Florida moving forward. If anything, it could be a negative, maybe, because now it's like, okay, coach is gone, and here we are. Someone else is going to come in, and you could see a bunch of kids leave. But like in the case of Penn State, like I think there was talent there, and I think that there were maybe things just got a little stale, and kind of once your goals were done, it was like, okay, let's go out and play now. And there was a little bit of bounce. And I took Penn State +3 last week at Iowa. UCLA, I don't think anybody saw coming. Clearly, there was something going on behind the scenes with the staff, whether it was Deshaun, whether it was the offensive coordinators, and say like clearly there was a reason why they have suddenly responded to Skipper and Neuheisel, and Nico finally looks like the guy that they thought he was going to be. They played a hell of a lot better. Nobody could saw that coming. But typically, I like to give a little bit of a boost to look at UAB. It's pretty clear that that either the team or surrounding, like there was something obviously with Trent. It didn't go well, and the team played better once he was gone. That's not to say he was the sole reason, but I think a lot of times when this happens, maybe teams kind of loosen up a little bit. They play a little freer. They don't feel as much pressure and like anxiety around the program, because look, they're kids. They hear it. You hear about your coach is going to get fired. It probably affects them. And then once the decision and the move finally comes, it's probably like, all right, well, we feel responsible for it or whatever. Nothing we can do about it, but that's not hanging over our head in our program anymore. You can just kind of go out and play and not worry about all the chatter off the field. And I think that the Colorado State is the team to look at this week. They're playing Wyoming, and no one thinks that they're going to go on the road and play well. But CSU's got a couple of guys on the defensive side of the ball that aren't bad. And Wyoming isn't exactly an offense that's going to light it up. So I think people who expect Wyoming to just go out this week and roll over Colorado State because they fired Jay Norvell, I'd be a little concerned about that.
Okay, Bear, I know you got plenty going on today, but all our fans been asking about you. So you're in demand, I know, around the country, but a lot of respect, but also a lot of love there, Bear. And keep up the good work and keep answering my texts because you always got the right scoop and the right and you and I are on the same page. Sometimes you get a little mad at Miami and I get a little mad at Georgia, but and he likes to bust me, but we're both for our teams. But I hope you have a continued success and very proud of you. I really am happy for you.
Appreciate you, my friend, and proud to be able to call you a friend some 30 years after the fact and knowing you as